Right, folks, we are live on Facebook. We are recording this session. So our first presenter of the morning, wrapped up and nice and warm in his scarf, Mr. Daines is coming to talk to us about how we can redesign a new you. Now, Guy likes to call himself the Silver Fox. He's a man with lots of experience, right from the front lines of opening the batting for a national team of cricket players through to years and years of fantastic sales management and sales experience. So really looking forward to Guy's talk this morning. And so sit back and find out how you can redesign a new you. Guy, over to you. I'll get your PowerPoint up in a sec.
Yeah, we're not, cool. When I call for the slides, will you do that? Thank you. So I've got a scarf on because it's just quite cold in my study because it's on the west side. But if I take it off as we go, then I know the session's getting really hot. Okay, so no problem. So today's session is all about you. Okay, if I spend 120 seconds about me, which I'll show you, go through one example relative to what I'm talking to, but the rest of the session is about you guys and what you can get out of this session. And if you can take away one or two items that might be applicable. As we know, we use the chat box. And if any of those of you, I'm connected with most of you who are on LinkedIn. If you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, please feel free to do so. So I'm going to chat and try and see it through your eyes over this past few months and looking beyond into the latter part of 2020 and into 2021. But if I can ask you to use the chat box now, and if I ask you this question, do you believe you need to redesign yourself? And just put yes or no, all of you in the chat box, will you? While you do that, I'm going to have a sip of my Coca-Cola. Do you believe you need to redesign yourself, yes or no? So there are 15 of us here, so I'd like to get 15 answers. That's how simple it is. And Peter, I can only see the top of your head, huh? But you've got a new hairstyle now, Peter. I see that. Okay, we've got how many people so far? Ivan, are you doing the adding up? No, I'll do the adding up. I'm not very good at adding up, and I am dyslexic. So we all got yeses here. Fantastic. Okay, so we got a whole lot of yeses. So let me go to Gavin, if I may, because Gavin's one of the elderly ones like me. Why do you believe you have to redesign yourself, Gavin?
I think the meeting people face to face makes things easier in terms of convincing them to change what they're doing. When you meet them at a distance like this, there's a tremendous amount more preparation that has to go into your meeting from your side.
Yeah.
So I think that the whole process of preparation for meetings has changed quite dramatically. You know, you can't rely on winging it in front of people because of the fact that you've got a personality, you're tall, you're good at speaking in front of people. Any of that sort of, it doesn't work anymore.
Okay, thank you very much. Frank, can I go to you, brother? Frank, are you there? No? Helen, you've just come on, Smiler. So my question was, do you believe you need to redesign yourself, yes or no? And if you can just put in the chat, Helen, yes or no?
Sure, I do. I said yes.
Oh, cool. Excellent, excellent. So let me go to
Hi.
Becky. Becky?
Sorry, guys, sorry, this is Veronica. I'm using my husband's tool for net. Sorry, Veronica.
Hello, Veronica.
Hi, everyone.
Mrs. Amaveji, how are you today?
Yes, I'm good. I'm good.
Do you believe you have to redesign yourself, yes or no?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, and why?
A lot has changed around us, and it's inevitable that your thinking has to change, your way of life has to change. So yes, I need to reinvent myself.
Okay, would anyone else want to comment why they have to change themselves?
I'd like to come in. I think I'd like to add to the word redesign. You've heard of the terms reimagine, recreate, reinvent, re-engineer. I think those are more accurate for myself. I saw Jasper come on board and say no. So clearly he was trying to stir your buttons and you didn't even see it. But I believe around us, the persons who we are, especially of our age, and that were probably made, and it's going to be difficult for us to change. But we can change the way that we actually do things, reimagine ourselves, get a new cap. And I must say I disagree with Gavin, which is why I love working with the guy. We're almost poles apart here. For me, I think this allows me to wing it even more because I can look into everyone's eyes and people can look into my eyes. I'm actually loving this because it gets me closer to people, and where I've normally been way further back. And when you talk on a stage and you've got 100 to 200 odd people there, you're actually not connecting. You're actually broadcasting and hoping that it sort of drops in. Yeah, you can see who's connecting and you can see who's disinterested. Oh, it's got to be that way around. When Guy is talking, it's quite incredible. I've learned something about this, and Zoom's helping me to redesign, reimagine, reinvent the way we get out to the rest of the world, Guy.
All right, thank you. Yes, but I didn't see your nose, so I'm quite interested. There's always someone who bucks the trend, you know, there's always exceptions to the rule. So yes, but tell me why no, Smiler. I mean, gentle.
Well, it's your question was about who needs to reinvent themselves.
No, redesign
now,
yourself.
Redesign yourselves now. So for me, I said no because I've been busy with the process for the last 20 years and it's never going to stop.
Very good. Very good. So I'm nearly about to take my scarf off because it's getting a bit hot. So the people that flip questions, so excellent. Irene, let me ask you, please.
Hello, Guy. Morning. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, the world is literally changing before our eyes. So we have to constantly now going forward, we have to totally always redevelop ourselves. And there's always room for growth. So absolutely, yes.
Okay, cool. So before I get onto a slide, why I believe we must redesign ourselves is the old ways history. It's totally obsolete. We have been disrupted in our mindset. Our mindsets are in a spin. I'm talking generally. There's always exceptions to the rule. The market forces are buggered. The bosses are buggered. The clients are buggered. The peers are buggered. There's new challenges and new opportunities. And on top of that, South Africa is the most stressed country in Africa, believe it or not, closely followed by Nigeria. So I wonder if that's got to do with the level of the economic so-called powerhouse in Africa. So, and the bottom line, I think, is you may have been successful before, but moving forward, you've got to become significant, which means quite a drastic change, the correct change, and adapting correctly. So forget about the success. Let's look at the significance and why is that's important. At the end of the day, if we look at the past 3 months and the studies and research I've done, people's mentally, there hasn't been much spoken about mental framework. People just been talking about mindset and haven't been talking deeper. So hopefully today, it's quite a deep subject, but I'll give you 2 simple slides to show you what I've been helping people with over the past few weeks. If you need a copy of those 2 slides, just ask Ivan, or he's very snowed under. Just connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll send these 2 slides to you so you can use them going forward, if you wish. Otherwise, throw them in file 13. So if I can ask Ivan to go on to the first slide. Good, good, good. Okay. Okay, so what I've done here is, on this first slide, there's three sort of models. And this TDBH model, I came up with in 2017 when I was coaching some CEOs and their sales teams. But to get to that, because everyone says, sort out your mindset, sort out your thinking. But over here, to get to that, our belief system, and what's our belief system? It's our attitude on certain things, our attitude on a higher being, the universe, God, the beliefs that we were instilled in us as kids. And whether we still like it or not now, we have still some of those deep beliefs in our subconscious mind, okay, that are instilled in us. And we don't really realize that because we haven't touched our consciousness deep down, okay? So whenever we do things, it's at the back of our head is this belief system. Coupled with that is the values that change over time. As you grow older, etc., your values change, but your belief system is stuck there. And then we move into memories. We all have good or bad memories of the past. And they say that these memories, some of us like to look at the bad and not the good, or look at both and see where we are. So before you can move to this stage here, because I believe in redesigning yourself, we need to relook at all this, your thinking, your discipline, and your behavior and your habits. Now, there's a lot of people that have got that already, but there's 95% of the population that are going through this hassle right at this point in time, okay? So we've got to really understand this. And we know what values are. It's things like building a strong community, integrity, being honest, etc., etc. So we each got our own value system. And when we find like-minded people, 9 times out of 10, their value systems are similar to ours. And that's what's critical. So, and to keep this short and brief and get your input, please put stuff in the chat. And then at the end of my 2 slides, we can talk through it and try and look at any practical examples if time permits. So if I move here to the TDBH, I say to myself, currently with a lot of people, they are thinking more outwardly and not inwardly, okay? And a lot of people say to me, Guy, how do you sort out your thinking? So I try and get it to a level where we have 60,000 thoughts a day, believe it or not. And the folk that are on the wisdom chats have heard me briefly talk about this for 60 seconds or whatever. But 75% of us spend 75%. You know, there's an odd percentage, could be incorrect, so don't shoot me for that. Thinking backwards and not thinking about the now and thinking forwards. We're spending so much time thinking backwards that it affects our brain, it affects the mind, and it affects what we actually do. So for me, maybe someone might ask it, but for me to try and sort out my thinking, I refer to things like reading philosophy, reading stuff with the Buddha. Other people might read the Bible, they might read success of different individuals, etc., to try and get in the mind of how these people think and operate. Because there's such a mental disorder at the moment, not only here in South Africa, but on my discussions on various platforms around the world, well, mainly in UK and a bit in Canada, it is quite chronic. So I just say to you guys, really every day, try and get in a position, whether it's even for 15 minutes a day, to sit quietly Okay? And really give yourself some good thinking about, hang on, how was the day? What is tomorrow looking at? Where am I in my mind? Do I need some help? Do I need some coaching? Do I need this, that, and the next thing? Okay? Because a lot of us are proud and that we don't believe that we need any body or mind coaching. Some of you will say, no, I'm doing it, Guy, etc., etc. And then I'll say, well done. Okay? So let me just go to discipline. And I say to ourselves, we all know what discipline's about. Okay? We know 9 times out of 10 the difference between right and wrong. And you can all go to the dictionary and call up the word discipline. But in your own mind, there was one general, for example, 4-star general, who got up and spoke, and a lot of people use the American sort of stories because South Africa is that way more inclined. We get exposed to more the US sort of business language. He got up and he said, still to his age now of 75, he makes his bed every morning. First thing. He's been doing that since the age of 10, and he still does it today. And he was just giving a simple example of discipline. So one could use that sort of story and say, okay, where's my discipline? Because if you get the right thinking and your mindset is good, and you've looked at your beliefs and your values and your memories, and you take it through, you start to feel a lot more comfortable in yourself. And there will maybe be some people that disagree with me, and that'll be good, so we could have a conversation on it. So that's a discipline. And moving to behavior, the biggest issue, and I'm going to use a big word now, but I'll break it down for you, is called your cognitive bias. And when I heard that word, I said, no, look, I'm a simple guy. Just tell me, what does that actually mean? What's this cognitive bias? This is academic shit, and you know what I mean? So I said, break this down for this silver fox. And they said, Guy, it's people always comparing themselves to other people. That is the biggest issue when it comes to behavior, is people continually comparing themselves. Now, through the past 2 days, through our wisdom chats or my chats on other platforms, this has become a real critical point, is that we shouldn't be comparing ourselves with others. We should be looking at ourselves 9 times out of 10, because this is who you are. Yes, and we spoke yesterday, or we spoke on a wisdom chat about having some role models, and everyone, I think Lee spoke about it yesterday, everyone subconsciously has a role model. But the other thing about behavior is you either have people who are optimistic, pessimistic, and then there's people who are trusting. So a lot of people are going through this at this point in time, and have gone through in the past 3 months. And I'm talking now about redesigning yourself 2020, the remaining and beyond, is to say, is it worthwhile being pessimistic? And it's not, because where's that going to get you? So every day you've got to actually see the opportunity and challenge that's been thrown at you. And sometimes some people might annoy you. Sometimes some situations might annoy you. That's when you've got to go back to your thinking and your discipline and actually understand, what is that other person going through? Because every person that I meet, okay, and as I agree with Trevor, I like this, so you can eyeball the person. Because every person you come across is stressed and pressurized. You need to understand that if you want to really develop a good understanding of building real trust and real relationships, because everyone is going through some sort of SH1T, okay? So let me stop there and see if, Ivan, are you going to throw questions, or what's any questions here from the chat box?
Gavin, we can pick it up. I don't see any specific questions on the chat box at this point in time, but
Okay, no problem. So let's go back to the slide. That'll be good of you. So the next point is habits. And there are two great books. One book changed my life in 1993, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And recently there's a new book out that's taken the world by the storm, Atomic Habits. And I forget the author. But there they get quite simply saying, when you start anything, you need to begin with the end in mind. Okay? You need to have that, as opposed to what we've spoken about looking backwards. The biggest thing is when I start something, what's the end going to try and look like? Whether that end is 3 months' time, 6 months' time, or a year's time. I've been chatting to CEOs recently where one company had a 18-month strategy from now. And I said, forget it. You need a 6-month strategy. I said, you need to get into the habit of forgetting out the long time frame and working closely with habits that you can actually try and manage and control. So those two little squares, however one wants to call it, moves me down to your present state and your desired state. And this to me is the most critical. And I have an arrow here, and this depends, and I couldn't do it on the slide, the size of this gap. Depends how quickly you move from present state to your desired state. So we're all in a present state, and we want to get to a desired state. I hope that is the case, because we're currently doing something and we might not be totally comfortable with it. And even if we are comfortable, we want to grow and progress. So we've got to get to another desired state. And not yet. Thank you. Nearly caught me off guard there, Ivan. So to get to this desired state, you've got to have skills, knowledge, experience, and confidence. Okay, and that seems quite simple. But let me give you a personal example. I was in a present state a few months ago, and I said, I need to get to a desired state here because I need to actually be able to come across better on LinkedIn, etc. I mean on Zoom. And I need to upskill because I had the time to upskill because there weren't so many clients around. So to get to this desired state, I lacked a bit of confidence because I had to go back learning. Now, I haven't done any learning or assignments or anything since 1987. I've read tons of books, like this John Maxwell, I forgot to mention, Thinking for a Change, brilliant book. I've done lots of reading, lots of research, etc., but I've done no actual courses. And I've had to do assignments and quizzes at my age. Hey, I lacked this confidence here. Okay, I had all this. I've got this stuff. This is easy stuff here. And then I call confidence TC, have total confidence. So I have total confidence on my subject matter, etc., etc. But to move here was, geez, I've got to go and study now. And I've got to write assignments or whatever. So what I've done to actually move from my present state to a desired state was I enrolled in doing an NLP practitioner's course. I enrolled in doing a professional life coaching course. And I enrolled in doing a mind coaching course. Why? People's behaviors have always fascinated me, and this has given me a little bit of an academic flavor that can actually help you guys, the people I talk to in the trenches, and talk to you at a simple level, because I'm not into the complicated, talk in the simple forms of saying, this is how easy it is to me, move. So if you're in your present state, really sit down and look at your skills, your knowledge and experience, and your confidence. look at where you want to go and why you want to go to that desired state. And that could be for any reason. Okay. So that's taken me a couple of months to move there. Now, obviously, a lot of you will say, well, now my desired state is my present state, guy. And I say, yeah, that is. Now you've got to have another desired state. And that's how you grow and progress. Okay, it's just a different way of looking at things in a simple two-slider saying, hey, if I keep these, then the silver foxes maybe help me here, there, and whatever. So that's what I've done. And I mentioned this session is all about you. So all of you are in the present state, or you might just got to your desired state, but in the next 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, you might get, that might be your desired state somewhere down the track. And you've got to say, well, how do I get there? What resources, okay, do I need? Is my skills good enough? Is my knowledge good enough? Is my experience good enough? Is my TC, my total confidence, good enough? If not, do I go and get some assistance from professionals? And that's your call. Good, good. So let me stop there. Any questions on this first slide?
Guy, yeah, there's a question from Becky. She
Yeah.
says, I have the ability to think outside the box. How do I improve this ability?
Excellent. So Becky, while you're thinking outside the box, do you sit and think outside the box with 2 or 3 other people that are like-minded? Hello, Becky.
Becky, if you'd like to unmute yourself and maybe chat with Guy.
Yeah, morning everyone. It's actually Donovan. I'm using Becky's phone. So the question is actually from my side.
Good. So Donovan, to improve your ability in terms of thinking outside the box, do you have what I call a circle of influence or a master group or whatever? Do you have 2 or 3 other people that will challenge your thinking for you to improve your ability to think outside the box?
Yes, I actually have one person. He's quite advanced. Actually, trying to catch up with him all the time. He always encourages me to read lots of books. He actually showed me his list of over so many thousand books that he's read already. So I'm constantly, being challenged by him.
And may I just interrupt there? And what discipline is he in?
He's actually in the mindset business, whereby he improves people's, ability to think.
Okay, so my recommendation, just on that brief description you've given me, is to have at least 2 or 3 other people that are maybe haven't read as much, not academic, not in the mind game, that are just entrepreneurs running their businesses or CEO running a bigger business. I think you need to expand on that so you get different things being thrown at you, different discussions, having different brainstorming to actually improve your ability to actually see a different picture. Not about a bigger picture in many ways. It's about seeing a different picture from a different perspective. I hope that helps you.
No, definitely, I got the answer. I'll definitely act on it. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else popped in anything?
Yeah, Motle Lapuli has got a hand up, guys. So Motle Lapuli, if you'd like to unmic and go for it.
Thanks very much. Yeah, this is exciting. I can relate because I'm also involved in this kind of business. I just want to contribute and say I like the relationship between beliefs, values, memories, and behavior, because in the work that we do and just in interacting with people and understanding how these things work, our behavior comes from our beliefs. So when we work as coaches, the primary work that needs to happen is really around the beliefs. The emphasis is not so much on the behavior, because the behavior is influenced by what I believe and what are the values that I espouse. So it's very important that people understand that you can change your beliefs, that you can challenge your values. Because when you look at stuff that you believe, that you value, and what all that produces, if what it produces is what you don't like, what you don't want, then you have to go back and change those beliefs and challenge those values so that the behavior can be different. So I just thought I'll add that to the discussion. Thank you.
Does anyone agree or disagree with that?
Well, I'd like to add in, if I may, Guy. I think what you raised for me and what Donovan's question there raised for me is, I think maybe we should stop all talking about thinking out of the box and think about doing out of the box. And so I've even got to stop that. You can't think about it. You've actually got to do. And to tie back to Motlelapula's session there yesterday, which I believe was about fear and the barriers of fear. Is that correct, Motlelapula?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And for me, this talking of the box is actually a metaphor for fear. That most people don't get out of the box because the box represents their particular fears and you have to knock them down. So when you marry the 2 points that have been made here between Guy and Motlelapula on break out of this, just do. Put yourself in strange environments, as Guy's almost doing. And I think, Guy, you even almost do yourself a disservice in not sharing you as an opening batsman in the international arena. Always have to be, you got to be fearless. You got to be facing different inputs from, you go in there, you prepare yourself for fast bowlers and some silly captain opens up with a spin bowler and you've got to be able to face that. And I think of you at the front line who's got to be fearless, and that's how you convey to people to actually make things happen. Man, when you walk out there with that bat ready to face the fastest guys in the world, you've got to have no fear. And in those days, you did it without a helmet. So I'm hoping that adds to Donovan's point of thinking out the box. I think too many people do thinking. You've actually got to do.
Yeah, and that's always a great point, because nothing gets done if you don't do. So if you've got all this other stuff here, and sometimes if you haven't, if it's still work in progress, we've all got to go and do. And personally, and I think I've got 15 seconds left to talk about me personally. I like to get something up and going, work in progress, and then adapt it and change it as you go and as you're doing. So yeah, a very good point, Trevor. Thank you.
Guy, if I can just ask, and please, you don't just have 15 seconds, because you've actually done a sort of, you're connecting with people as you're talking there. So don't feel restricted at this particular stage for you to get to that second slide. The question really I wanted to get into, and now I've distracted myself, so apologies. You go on to your second slide. I'll get it and I'll put it in the chat.
No, we can come back and chat live. That'll be good. So before we go to the next slide, these three little boxes, or whatever one wants to call them, these come together. My next slide are separate, okay? Just to give you an insight into some thinking that I do and how it's helped me in my 22 years of coaching businesses and business owners. So Ivan, if we could pop to the next slide. Okay. So after talking about all that other stuff, I've got three simple, what are they, pillars here. And the first one is YATM. You are the message. And I think Gavin brought it up right at the beginning of the session, was not being physical face to face, certain things that he believes he has to redesign in himself. And to me, I just try and keep it very simple. And I say, whenever you're communicating, what is your message? Because as we had speakers yesterday and the day before saying, you are the brand, you know, your company's not the brand, you know, one can have a discussion on that, but you are the brand when it comes to building up that humanity, that humility, and showing that you're human. So every time you speak or put out something, okay, what is your message? What are you sending out? Are you sending out that, yeah, you'd want to disrupt this, or you're sending out a message of hope, or you're sending out a message of let's collaborate, etc., etc. So if you just type the virtual trade fair, they're sending out a message of a whole lot of positive networking where it can be monetized and business can be generated. Okay, that's how I see it. Whether I see it incorrectly or not is irrespective, but that's to the organizers, but that's how I see it. The next is, how do you send your message? Okay, and today, a lot of us are sending our message in two ways. On this platform, and obviously on other social media like Twitter, LinkedIn, Opportunity, etc., etc. And then what I found that's very important on Zoom, and obviously previously when I was face-to-face, is the tone that you talk in, the pace that you talk in. Do I talk like this, etc., etc.? Do I go like this, whatever, whatever? Do I run through so no one can actually hear what I'm saying? Do I talk too quickly? So you've actually got to feel comfortable in how you're expressing yourself. And then the last point is showing enthusiasm and energy. And we had a lady in the, I think it was 4 o'clock on Monday, the graveyard session. But today, Sunday's a graveyard session because everyone wants to sleep in late. So I'm glad there's 19 of us. I thought there would maybe be 3 or 4. Then we could have got more cuddly and closer and all that sort of stuff. So this platform is showing the energy and enthusiasm and excitement, but in a good way, in a way that hopefully people will relate to you. Some people are not going to relate to you. That's just how it is. So you move on. That's if you have abundance mentality, you move on and you say cheerio. So that's, you are the message. So every time you're talking with anyone, think of your message. And sometimes my message purposely is in a different angle when I talk to clients, because I want to know and understand certain things, and I ask them certain maybe stupid questions. But let's get on to the next model. Some people use this because we all experience certain things. We all have life events, and how we react to the life events, and what does that actually mean to you as an individual? Okay, we all, I believe, have dysfunctional families, one way or the other. We're all crazy in one way or the other, but we try to get back to some sort of normality by looking at, hang on, the good in my life events. Because we're always going into something or coming out of something. That's how simple it is. So your life events up to today, what do they actually mean? And how have they affected you with your emotions? And over the past 10 years, a lot of people have started talking about people's emotional IQ, and that to be a top leader today, your emotional IQ has got to be on the button. I say our emotional IQ is, all individuals has got to be on the button. And we've really got to understand that, especially in the South African context where we are the most stressed out country on the continent. A lot of us might not feel stressed out, which is good. Then we're in a good space. The next is your response or your reaction. And those are different. So what is your response to a situation versus your reaction? And I say to you, how you respond is better than your reaction, because a lot of people don't react the correct way and they lose it. And then they forget the message, they forget the discipline, they forget their values. So you can see it ties back a bit. And then outcomes versus results. Okay. What are you actually looking for? Are you looking for a result, or are you looking for an outcome? And that will depend on the situation, and it'll depend on how you see specific situations, whether it's in a personal framework or in a business framework. Okay. This is one I love, frame shifting. And you guys can't see it there, so it's focused on what you're looking at. So frame shifting is looking simply, what's my frame set in my mind? And do you focus on what you're actually looking at versus perception, which is where are you looking from? And here's my take on perception. People say perception is reality. I mean, that's a load of rubbish. I'll tell you why. People have been conditioned for their lives to say perception is reality. Perceptions are modeled by the following: comparing ourselves to others, as I spoke about earlier, making assumptions, okay? And that's the worst, is making assumptions about a situation or a person when you haven't really got to know them. And putting a pun in here for wisdoms, we've had some situations where people have spoken about their journey, and before they even spoke or whatever, you made certain assumptions. But once you've heard their story, your assumptions change. Your beliefs change on that person. And the other point about perceptions is, to me, is expectations. Okay, what is your expectation? Now, I follow the way of the Buddha, or try to, and the way of the Buddha says, minimize your expectations. And there's a whole philosophy around that. So, to me, perception is not reality. We could have a great discussion on this separately, because I've had vigorous debate on this subject going forward for quite a while. So let me stop you there, and we got about 10 minutes left. There's no questions. Then the organisers have a good break till the next session. But are there any questions? Anyone wants to come up live so Guy can see their face and see their... Estelle, hello Estelle, and there's Chris. Chris is up next. Hey Chris, I wish you well, brother. Fantastic. So let's talk. Let's throw it open. Now, I want to see these faces. What's going on? Huh? I put no makeup on today, so let's sharpen up. Okay, any questions?
If no one's going to come on board, I'm going to ask you. I'm not letting you get away with murder here. And that is Guy.
Murder?
Guy, I know you dipped into it about your desired state, but I'd like to actually hear what is your desired state that you're looking to achieve in the next 3 years. And as I wrote that 3 years in the chat column, I realized that that's wrong, because we're going to have to change the views of who we are and where we want to be in even shorter time periods. So whether you want to answer it in a 3-year time period or a 1-year time period, you decide. But I'd like to get into your mind as to how you're working from present state to desired state, where you want to be from the silver fox that you are, and in 3 years' time, how you apply in all of your thinking to where you want to be.
Trevor, and I'm glad you've asked that question. And as I've been talking to some CEOs about their strategy being 6 months, so personally, I break it down into the next 3 months. Okay. Obviously, the longer, I have a longer term, and that picture is more to actually try and help the 20 to 30-year-olds become an entrepreneur and run their own business in South Africa. I started something up like that in 2016. It wasn't successful for a number of reasons, and one of them was just accessing the market. But I've got my network is a lot better now, etc., etc. So I see that as a longer, bigger term. But in my own personal space now, as the next 3 months, I see two things. continually trying to upskill, okay, as in person. And secondly, is trying to find and connect with those CEOs or MDs, because I have 2 operations, who really want to be significant, and what does that actually mean, and to actually coach them so they become better people. You see, a lot of people said we are in Trevor Kay, my good friend I've known for 30 years, the 4th industrial revolution, we're in this age, whatever. I just start to question and say, are we in the wisdom age, or are we in the creativity age, or are we in both? And so the next 3 months, if I can actually communicate and coach and uplift CEOs, managing directors, because a lot of them are going through so much fear and pain because they believe they should know everything, then that's great. It might get to a point, Trevor, after 3 months, then I say, no, I'm more comfortable, let me look 6 months, because depending on the market forces and market situation. So I'm just doing it bite size at the moment, because I believe the bite size is more appropriate for me. And then obviously this type of forum and being associated with you guys, one never knows what sort of collaborating can come, because I think Lee mentioned it yesterday, and I've been in the sales profession for 37 years. We're all selling ourselves one way or the other. And it's how we sell ourselves, and will business flow from that. So that's whether I've answered your question. That's how I see.
And if anyone else wants to come on board, please do just break in straight away. But if you're not coming on board, I'm just going to, my interpretation of what you're actually saying there is you're in journey mode. So when you mentioned seeing the end in mind, my perception of you is that you jump in from stepping stone to stepping stone. And in asking you, okay, where's your 3-year view? That gives a picture, a bigger picture. And I don't think anything is right or wrong. I also think through the 3-year or 5-year, or try and have a long-term view as to where you actually go. But I also believe you've got to be in the journey of life, and that you jump from stepping stone to stepping stone. And when you get down the road 3 stepping stones, your view might change, and you might take another course. So I'm interpreting that you're jumping from stepping stone to stepping stone, and I don't particularly hear a vision already there from Guy in terms of end in mind. But to me, that's no problem. It's just a comment.
No, that's fine. You know, a lot of people talk about, should I leave a legacy or whatever? And we could have different discussions on that. At the end of the day, it's, if there's 10, 15, 20 people, 100 people, 1,000 people that you've helped in one small way or the other, along your, along your stepping stones, to my mind, because I'm fairly simple, I like to just step like that. I've got that bigger thing about entrepreneurs in South Africa. But, I'm elderly and I'm a white gentleman, so I need to connect better with my African brothers and sisters.
Okay, Guy, I think based on that last statement, I see Motla Lepule is wanting to add in there while you 2 old white men are rattling on.
Good, because I didn't want to talk about myself. This is about you guys, and you guys seeing what I've put on the table to see.
No, absolutely, no, 100%. So Motla Lepule, you have your mic open, and you also put a comment into the chat box. So please join the conversation.
Oh, thanks very much. Thanks, Guy. Yeah, for your ideas. I'm really enjoying this. And I wanted to respond to what you're saying about the question that Trevor asked about your desired state. And I want to say, if we all think of 3 years ago, where were you 3 years ago, and what did you anticipate 3 years ahead by way of your own growth, by way of your own personal development? And when we do that, 2 things possibly would have happened either you are growing closer to your goals, to your objectives, to your desired outcome, or you are not. And why would that happen? And I like the reference you made to Atomic Habits, because when you read Atomic Habits, James Clear articulates very clear how having goals, objectives, etc. is important, but you can't end there. And the reason why most of us at the beginning of every year, we have ideas of how we want to be in that year, and we never achieve that, is because we end up at the goal, we end up at the objective. So for me to be able to change, not only do I need to have a goal or an objective, but I must have a system, you know, that will enable that goal, because otherwise nothing is going to happen. I'll just, you know, thumbsuck being different next year, etc. But if there is no intentionality in terms of what is changing about my actions every day, you know, and a good example is somebody who's studying. If you're studying, you can't just pass if you're not putting in the effort. So if every Friday I used to go out partying, you know, and part of what I put in my system to pass is Friday I don't go partying, I study, you know. So there is a change that will then enable me to achieve that goal. So as I say, I just thought I'll also add that in to say the goals, the desired states, the objectives are important, but have you put a system in place to facilitate that? Thank you.
Are you asking me personally?
No, I'm just sharing with everybody. Yeah. Thanks, yeah.
So, and you know, on that point, some people think that, it's just my understanding, is that, well, they've all got to go and do it by themselves in terms of where they are and to move. Forget about move from a business perspective, but from individuals. And I believe there's so many places that you can get the right input and advice to actually move you along. Good. Anything else?
Right, yeah. Any other folks? You want to just open your mic or put your hand up and we can see you. Any other questions or comments?
Now, it looks like Trevor and Jasper and
Dawn wants to make a comment there, guys. So.
Hello, Dawn.
Hello, Guy. Yeah, so just thinking about what you've been saying, you know, for us at a certain age, we've always done it the physical way. So this is so new territory for us, this virtual stuff, whereas the younger generation have been doing TikTok and YouTubes, and they are so far ahead of us on this platform, and they're not used to the physical environment like we are. So their dynamics are completely different. So for us, it's all a great learning curve, and yes, one has to grow and learn.
And I thank you for that. And I found with the 20, 30-year-olds, etc., they've got to learn how to communicate better on this sort of forum. You know, they can do all this sort of stuff and whatever, and they can talk on WhatsApp and video talk on WhatsApp. But when they're getting into a professional sort of setup, and there's a diverse group of participants, then it's a major learning curve for them. And so they got just as much adjusting and changing to do to redesign themselves. But to finish off, just redesigning yourself, I think it's an ongoing workable program that you've got to understand in your own mind. And I try to just highlight some steps that you might be able to take to actually keep on looking at redesigning yourself. Some of us do it automatically because that's just how it is. And we don't actually have to think about it, as Jasper said. So the end of the day, it's horses for courses, and yeah, hopefully it's been fairly enlightening.
Great, thanks, Guy. Thanks very much for opening the betting for us this morning. We really appreciate it. First up this morning. So
51 not out.
Absolutely, yeah. Going for the century. So I really appreciated, you know, getting us to think about reinventing ourselves and getting outside the box, perhaps as well. I think you know, that was one of the other comments that was made. You know, those comfort zones we tend to fall into, I think, can also be defined by the boxes that we find ourselves in. So really appreciate you kicking off the day for us this morning, and everybody's participation. If I can just